In this lesson, we're going to consider parts and some miscellaneous useful functions within SOLIDWORKS part tools. So I'm going to start with a new part. Click OK. And I'm going to go ahead and make a new sketch on the front plane. Right-click, New Sketch. And the purpose of this part is, this part's going to be this part will be a rectangular bracket, and so I'm going to make a rectangle, but instead of using the general rectangle, I'm going to use the center rectangle, and my first point will be on the origin. My next point will be just somewhere else there, quadrant 1, and we'll do smart dimensions, and let's make the top be 10 inches, and the side be 5 inches. It's fully defined. I'm going to exit the sketch, and when I do extrude, instead of doing a blind extrusion, so let me open this up so we can see what's going on, I'm going to choose mid-plane, and let's let this be 2 inches thick, and we'll click OK. Now the reason I did it this way, let me turn on all 3 planes. I'm going to shift and select all 3 planes and click the Show button. We've now created a part in which the origin is in the very center of the part, and the construction planes that were already there, the front, right, and top plane, are now bisecting each of the faces. This is really useful if I'm creating a symmetric part. So now let's consider the holes function. So to create a hole, I'm going to use the holes wizard. So I'll click the holes wizard and it'll start. Notice we have lots of different types of holes. Let's use a counterbore hole. Let's see, a counterbore hole is this one that's selected right here at the top. The size is for the drop down. Let's do a number 10 with a normal fit. And we can look at the custom sizing here to show exactly how this works, but for now we'll just assume that the sizing will be appropriate. In condition is set to through all. That's good. And so with all of these features there, I'm going to go ahead and switch to the Positions tab. Now what this is asking me for is the face that the holes will be on. So if I choose this front part of the Boss Extrude 1. The first selection was to choose the face. Now that that face has been selected, it's going to allow me to drop holes. I'm going to drop 4 holes here. 1, 2, 3, 4. And notice I'm trying to line up a little bit, but I'm not being terribly concerned if it's not all the way lined up. I'll click the check mark, and there are 4 holes now that are labeled counterbore. So the holes function is really useful, especially when we come to start drawing our parts. So the other planes are starting to get in the way, so let me highlight all of them again, and let's hide the planes so they're not showing. So what happens on the drawing now, if I use the holes wizard to create the holes, I'll have one call out that'll tell me what the counterbore is, and these are the types of pieces of information that machinists find very helpful. So it's if you know you have a pattern of holes that a lot of them are going to be cut by a machinist, it's advantageous to use the hole wizard to kind of group all of those features together. We obviously could have created each hole individually by a single extrusion through, and then another extruded cut that for the counterbore, and then chamfer up here at the top to represent deburring after the hole is finished. And then we could pattern those in a linear pattern, and that would be fine, but I won't have the notation that's as consistent as I will if I use the holes wizard. The other thing to note is if I hit the plus sign, one of these sketches is not fully defined. So let's take a look at what the hole function is actually doing. Sketch 2 shows a profile. Notice I didn't enter any of these profiles. 90 degree for that taper, for the deburring up at the top, and all of these dimensions. All these were set by the functions within the whole wizard. And at the end of the day, the whole function is a combination of a revolve cut and a pattern. So sketch 2 shows what the revolve cut is going to be. It's going to be a 360 degrees cut of this profile. And sketch 2 shows the location for those patterns. I'm going to go and edit this sketch now. So I'll go into edit, and I'm also going to view that sketch normally. Get there. So it's the Z plane. So I'm going to use the same rectangle I used before, the center rectangle. I'm going to first grab it from the origin, and then I'm going to make it coincident with one of these lines, one of these points. There we go. And hit escape. Let's see, before I hit escape, let's do for construction. So it's a construction line. And now I'm going to take this point, and I'm holding down control and selecting the other point. I'm going to say I want, let's see, not the face, so delete that. I want this other point here. I want them to be coincident. I want this point to be coincident with that corner, and I want this point to be coincident with that point. So they're now all coincident. Do smart dimension, and we can do, maybe we want this whole thing to be a distance away from the end, so we'll let this be 1 inch. And this dimension here will also be equal to 1 inch. And it looks like, although I thought the center point was coincident with the origin, it wasn't. So now I'm going to hold control and select both the center point and the origin. Let's see here. There's the origin. Holding down control, select the center point of the rectangle, and make sure those are coincident with each other. And now the sketch is fully constrained, and I've made sure that my holes are all where they're supposed to be. I also now have added a hole. So this is another important point in this sketch 3. When I'm editing the sketch, any points that I drop in here, when I exit the sketch, will be viewed as another hole. So it's easy to add new holes within that sketch without having to go back into the whole wizard. So let's edit that sketch again. I'm going to delete this point. So by deleting that inner circle, that inner point, I've removed the hole from that location, but I also now have allowed my sketch to not be fully constrained. So a couple other things we can do. I'm going to rotate around to the back side here, and let's do a fillet. And the fillet, let's say we have a 1 inch fillet. So there's 1 inch, and then I'm going to select the outside edges here. So this is a very useful feature for making nice smooth curves. And I'll click OK. And I also could do a shell, and what it's asking me for is, first off, how thick do I want the shell? Let's let the shell be 1/4 of an inch, so 0.25. And I'm going to click the face that I want to open up. So I'm going to click the check mark here. It's going to shell around those features and give me a quarter inch all the way around the features that I chose to shell. Last thing I want to remind you of is here where the materials can be specified. So if I right click on material, there are some of the most common materials just ready for me to grab. So for instance, a 1060 alloy steel. If I go into edit material, then we can choose different types of steels, or for instance aluminum. A 6061 aluminum is pretty common, so let's use just a 6061 alloy, and all of the properties there are set. So if I click apply, the appearance just changed, but more importantly, the properties about its weight and those types of things have also just changed.